The coronavirus pandemic has closed countless businesses and put millions of Americans out of work. Earlier, I sat down with billionaire entrepreneur Mark Cuban to discuss what kind of an economic recovery we should expect and when. Mark, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said this week he thinks the economy will be back open for business in May. Do you think it'll be that soon, and how will you decide when to send your people back to work?
I mean, it's semantics. Will it be open 24 hours a day? No. Will we open some doors and take some baby steps? Yes. How will I decide? It's very simple. When the scientists say it's safe for my employees to come back to work, that's when I'll feel confident enough to let them go back to work.
The U.S. economy, I don't have to tell you, is taking a huge hit. 17 million people filing for unemployment benefits over the last 3 weeks. Goldman Sachs predicts that the GDP in the second quarter, instead of going up 2% or 3%, is going to go down about 30%, contract by about a third. President Trump says that when we do get a recovery, it's going to be a fast one, a V-shape, sharp down, sharp up. Here he is talking about that.
I think we can get more than back to normal from an economic standpoint, actually be better, but more than back to normal.
I think we're going to go like a rocket ship once we get back to business. There's a lot of pent-up energy and demand.
Do you see a quick recovery, or do you think it's going to be a little bit slower than that?
I wish he was right, but he's not. I think it's going to be slower. I think there's going to be so many different ways we have to adapt to this new abnormal. People aren't going to just venture outside. They're not going to go to large gatherings. They're not going to feel confident right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of trepidation, and that concern is going to lead to people holding back and spending money. You know, we're not going to know if the virus is coming back. And on top of that, when it comes to hiring people back, companies aren't going to just immediately bring everybody back. So there are a lot of people who were hoping they'd go back to work that just won't be able to, and I think that's going to create problems.
But you do talk about a transition, and if it's not a quick recovery, an eventual recovery, and you keep talking about America 2.0. What does that mean?
So there will be a lot of change. There will be a lot of uncertainty, but out of that uncertainty will come new great businesses. If there's one thing that sets this country apart from any other country in the world, it's the fact that we're a country of entrepreneurs. We're creative. We're innovative. We like to take risks and chances to create new businesses. And that's exactly what we'll do. And I have no doubt in my mind that in 5 years or 10 years, we'll look back and there'll be 25 or 50 companies that got started out of the pandemic of 2020 that are just amazing and world-changing. But that said, it's going to take us time for all those companies to have their impact. So I don't see a V-shaped recovery, but I have no doubt in my mind that we'll come back and be stronger than ever, but it's not going to happen immediately.
All right, well, let's talk about the recovery as it comes in stages. You're best known as being the owner of the Dallas Mavericks NBA basketball team. President Trump talks about the hunger to get back to life as normal, including life in people supporting and going to games. Take a look.
They want to sit next to each other like normal at a football game, baseball game, basketball game, hockey game. No, we want to go back to life.
But, you know, you were talking about people not immediately embracing the idea of big crowds, 20,000 people in an arena sitting right next to a stranger. So do you think the NBA returns this season? How do you do that with social distancing? And could you envision a situation where everybody who comes in has to have their temperature taken?
Well, a couple questions there, Chris. Do I see us getting back to a season? I don't want to make any predictions, but I'm hopeful that we will. But I don't think we'll play in front of fans. I think initially we'll play just for the TV cameras with essential personnel and players. And I think that's a great thing because I think we need things to cheer for. We need teams to get excited about. We want a communal experience so we can all root for our favorite teams. That's going to be a big step. And I think the NBA recognizes that that's a responsibility we have and that we'll undertake as soon as it's safe, because we won't do anything to jeopardize the safety of our players or employees. Now, part two to that, in terms of when do we get back to that sense of normalcy where we can all crowd into a stadium or an arena, once we have confidence in the medicine, then I think that's when it happens. when, again, American exceptionalism is outstanding. The scientists are going to come up with solutions. And when they do, and when we have that confidence, people will go back. We're already taking the precautions and already going through the process at the American Airlines Center to say, okay, what do we need to do in terms of sterilization, sanitization, repeat cleanings, in terms of informing people that, the seat that they're in has been cleaned, 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago, whatever it may be. And so we'll take those necessary steps. So once the science is in place and we start to feel confident, then the facilities and the arenas and stadiums, et cetera, will take the steps to make sure that it's clean. And then once we start going through, confidence will build.
You have also invested in about 150 small businesses as part of your work on Shark Tank. I know that you support the $2 trillion program, bailout, whatever you want to call it, a big chunk of which is for small businesses. But I also know you think it would work better instead of this payroll protection plan where small businesses have to apply for loans if instead they just got overdraft protection. How would that work?
Very simply. So with your bank where you already have a checking account, you would work with the bank to designate, here's my rent, my landlord that I write checks to, here are my utilities that I write checks to, here's what I do for payroll. And for those checks, they won't bounce. And the reason you do it that way is you reduce all the friction. Right now, we're seeing all the friction from the banks to distribute loans or approve loans and then distribute the PPP loans and how it's slowing everything down. And that's leading to companies being laid off. Employees being laid off and companies closing. With an overdraft protection program, companies could just continue as usual, pay their payrolls, pay their insurance, pay their utilities, rent, et cetera. And they wouldn't have that fear that they wouldn't be able to make those payments. And so I always just felt that the overdraft protection program would work a whole lot better.
You also say that the government should take a hard line when dealing with big corporations, for instance, the airlines, which the president is talking to this weekend. Don't let the CEOs do anything to set the terms for how they're going to be bailed out.
Yeah, without question. I mean, look, they're coming for money for a reason, and this is taxpayer money. So I'm not saying don't give them money, but there needs to be terms and conditions that really put the taxpayer first. If we're going to give them a loan, that's great, but let's ask for equity. Let's ask for equity kickers. I use Warren Buffett as an example. When he helped bail out Bank of America in the early 2010 time frame, he gave them $5 billion as a loan, but he also got warrants and options and other things that he then turned into a $12 billion profit. We should be able to do that for American citizens. And part two to that, Chris, is it also can show other benefits for the airlines. The government buys a lot of commercial air travel. So it's not inconceivable that we, as part of this deal, we can prepay for commercial travel and work out programs with the airlines to have federal employees travel to build confidence in the airlines again. So have the government prepay however many hundreds of millions of dollars that we typically spend with those airlines, work on a sanitation program to make sure that the insides of those airlines are safe when we go to fly them, have federal employees fly in those newly safe airlines and develop confidence so that then can be conveyed to the general public, then they're going to be more likely to travel. That'll lead to the airlines coming back sooner.
Finally, you talked back in 2019 about running for president before you finally decided not to do so. And the other day, you said you were reconsidering. Now, I don't have to tell you, I suspect you know this already, that the deadline for filing as an independent candidate has already passed in some states and is about to in other states. So I know Mark Cuban likes publicity as much as the next person, maybe more than the next person. You're not really serious about this, are you?
Hey, unique circumstances. You just never know, Chris. I never would have considered it prior to a month ago. But now things are changing rapidly and dramatically. So there's different ways to get through those issues you mentioned. So I'm not saying no, but it's not something that I'm actively pursuing. I'm just keeping the door open.
But are you saying that this is something that is serious?
As it is today, I'd say probably not, that it's not going to happen. But again, so much can change. You just never know. This is not something we've seen before. This is obviously a unique set of circumstances. And so I'm just not going to say no. It's just, you just don't know what can happen between now and November.
Mark Cuban, you're always interesting and you're always provocative. Thanks so much for sharing part of your Easter weekend with us.
Dave, thanks for having me, Chris, and stay safe.